In the thick, shadowed woods of West Virginia, there's a cabin that no one in the nearby town dares to speak of. Locals avoid the area, as if the trees themselves whisper warnings. Yet everyone knows something unspeakable hides behind the weathered doors and shuttered windows. Rumors speak of a family that never left the cabin, generations born and raised in secrecy, untouched by the outside world. Visitors say the air inside is thick with a strange, unsettling energy, and anyone who has ventured too close often disappears without a trace. Tonight, we delve into a story so dark, so forbidden, that the town has gone to great lengths to erase it from memory. This is the true story of the Inbred Cabin Horror, a family whose secrets were so twisted, the entire town pretended they didn't exist. You will hear about missing children, suspicious disappearances, and the shocking events that unfolded when one curious investigator dared to uncover what the town had been hiding for decades. The cabin seems ordinary from the outside, but the horrors within will challenge everything you think you know about family, morality, and the evil that can fester in isolation. By the end of this story, you'll question whether some secrets are meant to stay buried, and whether curiosity can ever truly be satisfied. Nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, the town of Black Hollow seemed quaint on the surface, with its cracked sidewalks, rusting street lamps, and the faint smell of wood smoke lingering in the air. To outsiders, it appeared like any small rural town, but locals knew better. Whispers of disappearances, hushed warnings, and unspoken rules surrounded the area near the old forest. The most forbidden spot was a cabin on the far edge of the woods, long abandoned in appearance, yet rumor held that someone, or something, still lived inside. The townspeople treated it like a taboo subject, changing the conversation or giving vague, nervous answers whenever visitors asked about it. Parents warned their children to stay away, yet curiosity often drew the braver ones closer, only to return shaken or not at all. The cabin was said to belong to the Harrow family, whose lineage had been isolated for decades. Town records were sparse, almost intentionally misleading. Genealogical reports suggested intermarriages between cousins over generations, creating an inbred family whose members were described as physically disfigured, socially withdrawn, and violently secretive. Stories about the Harrows often came in fragments: a scream in the night, the sight of a pale face staring from a second-story window, strange figures moving between the trees. Some claimed the family maintained a strict isolationist code, punishing anyone who tried to interact with them. Others insisted the Harrows had knowledge of dark rituals, a legacy passed down from ancestors who believed the woods themselves were alive with malevolent energy. Even the town law enforcement seemed hesitant to act. Missing persons reports were minimal, often dismissed as runaways or lost hikers, even when patterns suggested something far more sinister. A pervasive fear held the town hostage. Fear of the family, fear of the cabin, and, perhaps most of all, fear of revealing the truth. Locals learned early on that silence was safer than curiosity, and over time, the cabin became less of a physical location and more of a symbol of everything the town wished to forget. Yet, for some, the lure of the unknown proved irresistible, and that temptation would eventually draw someone into the Harrow family's dark world. The first undeniable sign that something was wrong came in the form of a missing teenager named Emily Harker. She was 17, curious, and known for her daring nature, often sneaking into the edges of the forest, despite repeated warnings. On a crisp autumn evening, Emily vanished near the outskirts of Black Hollow, close to the Harrow cabin. Her bicycle was found lying in the grass, tires bent and twisted, as if dropped in haste, and her backpack lay sprawled a few feet away. No tracks led into the woods. No tire marks suggested anyone had taken her by force. The town reacted predictably. Whispers filled every street, parents tightened their rules, and law enforcement filed a report that would go largely unresolved. Yet for those who knew the Harrow legend, Emily's disappearance was the first piece of a grim puzzle. One neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Collins, swore she saw faint lights in the cabin windows the night Emily vanished. The lights flickered unnaturally, almost as though they were moving in rhythm with a pulse. Others reported hearing strange, distorted noises in the forest, half whispers, half screams. But when anyone tried to investigate, the sounds would vanish, leaving only an oppressive silence. Fear settled over Black Hollow, like a living fog. Even the bravest townsfolk felt eyes on them whenever they approached the forest, a sensation that made their skin crawl and their hearts pound. The case of Emily Harker set off a chain reaction. More teenagers and young adults reported strange encounters near the cabin, each telling tales of distorted faces glimpsed through trees, guttural sounds at night, and the overwhelming sense that someone, or something, was always watching. Yet the town collectively refused to confront the truth. Meetings were held, warnings were issued, and residents were subtly discouraged from speaking publicly. The cabin, once a curiosity, had become a silent sentinel of terror, its reputation solidified by the mysterious events surrounding Emily's disappearance. Nobody knew the full extent of what had occurred that night, but it was clear. The Harrow family's world was far from ordinary, and those who crossed the invisible boundary of their domain often did not return. Emily Harker's fate was sealed as the first in a series of ominous incidents, and the town's uneasy silence would only deepen as darkness encroached further into Black Hollow. As investigators and curious townsfolk edged closer to the Harrow cabin, stories about the family began to surface. The Harrows were not just reclusive, they were profoundly unsettling. Generations of intermarriage had produced individuals with distorted, uneven features and an unpredictable, sometimes violent temperament. Locals described them as unnervingly quiet, yet capable of bursts of terrifying aggression when provoked. Children born into the family were often kept hidden, rarely seen in public, and rumors suggested that they were raised under strict, almost ritualistic rules, with punishments that bordered on the cruelly sadistic. The family's patriarch, Ezekiel Harrow, was said to be a looming figure, gaunt and skeletal, with eyes that seemed to pierce through the shadows. He controlled the household with an iron grip, ensuring no secrets of the family ever left the cabin. Women of the family were described as pale, withdrawn, and strangely unaware of the world outside the forest. They carried an air of both fragility and danger, like delicate statues that could shatter violently without warning. Even the dogs that wandered near the property reportedly acted skittish, growling and backing away as if sensing some invisible menace. Those who dared to approach the Harrow domain reported a disorienting sense of unease. The air seemed heavier, the forest darker, and shadows moved in unnatural ways. Some investigators noted signs of past inhabitants, crude carvings on trees, strange symbols etched into the cabin walls, and remnants of fires that burned with a peculiar acrid smell. It became clear that the Harrows were more than just an isolated family. They were a living embodiment of the town's darkest fears. The longer someone lingered near their territory, the more the oppressive aura seemed to seep into their mind, leaving an unsettling impression of eyes, walk, hing, of whispers, just beyond hearing. Despite the horror stories, a few brave or foolish townsfolk claimed to have seen family members inside the cabin. They described figures with uneven, asymmetrical faces, movements jerky and unnerving, and an overall presence that seemed almost inhuman. The combination of isolation, secrecy, and visible deformity gave the Harrows a reputation that was equal parts feared and reviled. By now, Emily Harker's disappearance was no longer seen as a random tragedy. The Harrows themselves had become the epicenter of dread in Black Hollow, a family whose very existence defied reason and whose secrets would soon challenge everything the town thought it knew. Determined to uncover the truth, a young investigative journalist named Claire Davis ventured into the forest near the Harrow cabin. Armed with only a flashlight and a notebook, she approached cautiously, her every step crunching against the carpet of dead leaves. The deeper she went, the more oppressive the air became, thick with an almost tangible sense of dread. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally across the path, and the trees themselves appeared to lean closer, as if watching her approach. By the time she reached the cabin, the setting sun had cast long skeletal shadows that made the structure appear more like a trap than a dwelling. Claire's first impression was of decay and abandonment, but subtle signs suggested recent activity. Footprints in the dirt that didn't belong to any known animal, faint smoke curling from a barely visible chimney, and strange carvings along the doorframe, symbols that seemed to pulse in the dim light. As she stepped closer, the cabin door creaked open, revealing a dim interior cluttered with remnants of daily life, yet tinged with an eerie sense of disarray. Old photographs hung crooked on the walls, showing faces distorted with age and deformity. The deeper she went inside, the more the silence weighed on her, punctuated only by distant, almost imperceptible noises. A faint scratching, a whisper, or the shuffle of movement behind closed doors. Inside, Claire discovered a series of journals belonging to family members, their pages filled with fragmented accounts of isolation, strange rituals, and twisted family traditions. Some entries hinted at knowledge of events long suppressed by the town. Disappearances, unspoken violence, and an unyielding devotion to preserving the family's secrecy. One journal, belonging to a teenage girl whose name was smudged beyond recognition, described a hidden room in the cabin's basement, a space Tissun no outsider had ever been permitted to enter. Driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, Claire decided she had to find it, believing that the answers to Emily Harker's disappearance, and countless others, lay behind a locked door somewhere below. By the time she descended the creaking stairs into the basement, a pungent metallic odor filled her nostrils. The walls were lined with jars containing unidentifiable swotents, skeletal remains of small animals, and scattered personal items that suggested someone had been kept there against their will. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified in the oppressive darkness. Claire realized that she had stepped into a world where time and morality were warped, a space where the Harrow family's secrets festered like an infection, waiting to be discovered. The weight of what she had uncovered was nearly unbearable, yet the truth was within reach, and the deeper she delved, the more horrifying it became. Claire's flashlight flickered as she stepped deeper into the basement, the air growing thick with the metallic tang of decay. That's when she heard it, a faint rhythmic whispering, almost like a chant, coming from a hidden doorway, partially obscured by rotting crates. Her heart pounded, but curiosity overpowered fear. Pushing aside the debris, she revealed a narrow stairway, spiraling down into complete darkness. With each step, the temperature dropped, and a sense of living, watching eyes pressed against her mind. At the bottom, she entered a chamber that seemed impossibly large, far beyond the cabin's exterior dimensions, as if space itself warped to contain the horror within. What she found made her stomach churn. The chamber was filled with family members, all grotesquely deformed and staring at her with blank, hollow eyes. But it wasn't just their appearance. It was their behavior. They were meticulously cataloging individuals, writing names in ledger books, and arranging personal belongings on shelves like trophies. And then Claire noticed something she would never forget. A small makeshift cot in the corner held a young girl with Emily Harker's distinctive bracelet. Emily was alive, pale and frail, but conscious, her eyes wide with terror. The Harrows had been holding her for weeks, raising her in isolation, feeding her just enough to survive, while the rest of the town pretended she had vanished. Before she could process the scene fully, Ezekiel Harrow emerged from the shadows. His gaunt face twisted into a grotesque, knowing smile. "Curiosity is dangerous," he said softly, almost reverently, as the rest of the family turned toward her. Claire realized with a sickening clarity that the Harrows didn't merely survive in isolation, they thrived on secrecy and control. They had orchestrated countless disappearances over decades, carefully managing the town's perception, and while indulging in a macabre, inbred hierarchy that celebrated their twisted traditions. The shocking truth was undeniable. Black Hollow's missing persons were not random, nor were the Harrows merely eccentric. They were predators, and the entire town had become complicit through silence. Every whispered warning, every hushed conversation, had been a brick in the wall, protecting the family's atrocities. Claire's presence had disrupted that delicate balance, and she knew that escaping would be far more dangerous than uncovering the truth. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The horror she sought to expose was not just in the past. It was alive, breathing, and aware of her every move. Every exit, every shadow, seemed to pulse with menace, as if the family had anticipated her intrusion from the very beginning. Claire had uncovered the unimaginable, and the inbred horrors of the Harrow cabin were now directly in her path. Claire's mind raced as Ezekiel Harrow's words echoed through the cavernous basement. Every instinct screamed that she needed to leave, but the weight of Emily Harker's frightened gaze rooted her to the spot. Slowly she backed toward the stairs, trying to appear calm, careful not to provoke the grotesque family members surrounding the room. Her flashlight flickered again, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to twist the Harrow's figures into nightmarish shapes. The oppressive atmosphere pressed down on her like a physical force, making her chest tighten and her thoughts scatter. Suddenly, a shrill scream shattered the silence. Emily had attempted to flee, and the reaction was instantaneous. Family members lunged, their jerky, unnatural movements unnerving even the most rational part of Claire's mind. She grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her toward the stairway, hearts pounding as every shadow seemed to reach for them. Objects crashed behind them, crates overturned, shelves toppled, and the walls echoed with guttural growls and whispers. Claire realized that the Harrows weren't just watching. They were tracking, anticipating her every move. The exit was perilously close, yet it felt miles away in the distorted labyrinth of the cabin's interior. They reached the stairs, only to find Ezekiel blocking the top. His gaunt face twisted in a cruel grin. "You can't leave." "Not after seeing this," he hissed. But Claire acted on pure adrenaline. She shoved past him, stumbling into the forest night, dragging Emily through brambles and underbrush. Behind them, a cacophony of inhuman screams and furious pursuit erupted. Branches tore at their clothes and skin, But they ran blindly, driven by desperation and terror. Every step took them deeper into the forest, where the oppressive darkness seemed to hide both the path and the horrors still lurking behind them. Finally, the first glimmers of dawn broke through the canopy. They burst onto a narrow, deserted road. Exhausted, bleeding, and shaken to the core, Claire and Emily collapsed near a broken fence. The cabin and its grotesque occupants were gone from sight, as though swallowed by the night. Yet even in the relative safety of open air, Claire felt the lingering weight of the Harrow family's presence, a reminder that some horrors are never truly escaped. The escape was miraculous, but it came at a psychological cost. The true extent of the family's atrocities, the town's complicity, and the deep-seated evil festering within that secluded cabin would haunt Claire forever. Black Hollow's darkest secrets were no longer just rumors. They were an inescapable reality, etched into her mind with every horrifying detail she had witnessed firsthand. By the time Claire and Emily reached the outskirts of Black Hollow, the first pale light of morning cast a fragile glow over the town. The forest seemed deceptively peaceful now, as if the horrors that had lurked within its shadows were a dream. But the weight of what they had escaped was undeniable. Emily clung tightly to Claire, trembling, unable to speak, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. The inbred horrors of the Harrow family had not only threatened their lives, they had shattered the town's fragile sense of safety, exposing a dark truth that had festered for generations. When Claire reported the incident to local authorities, she found herself met with reluctance and disbelief. Few were willing to confront the Harrow's deeds, preferring to dismiss her account as a combination of imagination, fear, and trauma. The town's complicity, nurtured over decades of silence and fear, made official action nearly impossible. Black Hollow, cloaked in its small-town charm, had always protected its secrets, and the Harrow cabin had become the ultimate symbol of that protection. Yet Claire knew the truth could not remain hidden forever. She meticulously documented the events, from Emily's rescue to the grotesque discoveries in the cabin, creating a record that would one day reveal the depth of the town's darkest shadows. Even after leaving Black Hollow, the memory of the Harrows lingered. Claire could still see their distorted faces in the shadows, hear the faint whispers echoing in her mind, and feel the oppressive weight of their presence as if it had imprinted itself on her soul. The town pretended the horrors didn't exist, but those who had survived, and those who dared to uncover the truth, understood that evil had a stubborn way of persisting, refusing to be forgotten. Emily, though safe, carried the trauma of her captivity and the unsettling knowledge of what had transpired within that cabin. Her life would never be the same, and neither would Claire's. The story of the Inbred Cabin Horror serves as a chilling reminder. Some secrets are so dark, so taboo, that a whole community can bend reality to protect them. Curiosity may bring danger, but it is also the only path to uncovering the truth. Black Hollow's legacy of fear, silence, and complicity remains a testament to the horrors that can flourish when society chooses to look the other way. And somewhere deep in the woods, the Harrow family waits, hidden and patient, a reminder that evil often thrives where nobody dares to see.